Good evening, Olive, Arlo, and Frank. Grandpa coming to you from the living room in Jack's Beach. And this evening we're going to do the 12th chapter of the book of Exodus. And that's why in the background we're watching a video of a Jewish family having what's called the Seder. Now, what they just did there is they lit the candles and said blessings over lighting the candles. And everything that they uh, do blessings. The men are supposed to have their heads covered. They wear yarmulkes, and a lot of different cultures and religions wear head coverings. I believe the women all have to have their heads covered too. And that's also true in a lot of different religions, even in Christianity and parts of the church as it rolled out, as we would say, from the IRS rolling out a program. As they rolled the church out, there were certain places that there were customs that the women had to have their hair covered. And of course, all of your relatives who are Muslim, they cover their hair sometimes. So let's get started as they have this meal. The Seder's a meal, and they're going to be doing things. And I'm going to try not to spend a lot of time talking about the Seder, but it is there. And it's something that you can even go to a Messianic Seder, which is Jewish people who believe in Jesus. And they do it on, I believe it's the last day of Passover each year. Chapter 12 says, "The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, 'This month is to be your beginning of months. It will be your first month of the year. Tell the whole community of Israel, the 10th day of this month, they each must take a lamb for themselves according to their families, a lamb for each household. If any household is too small for a lamb, the man and his next door neighbor are to take a lamb according to the number of people. You will make your account for the lamb according to how much each one can eat. Your lamb must be perfect.'" Now, by perfect, it means without any blemishes. "A male, 1 year old, you may take it from the sheep or from the goats." So it could be either a sheep or a goat. Now, the it's a male, and it's going to kind of substitute for what's happening to the people who aren't doing the Passover. And we're going to see that there's a sign that people place on their door. I won't do a spoiler alert on it. And they will be spared having their firstborn son in the family killed. But if you recall, the ones that God's going to strike down, it's the firstborn male children and the cattle, the domestic animals. And all that stuff there that you see is traditional for the Seder. And this is in remembrance of this meal. We're going to see that they're going to eat a meal. There's matzah bread that doesn't have any yeast in it. Your lamb must be perfect, a male, 1 year old, and you may take it from the sheep or from the goats. You must care for it until the 14th day of this month, and then the whole community of Israel will kill it around sundown. They will take some of the blood and put it on the 2 side posts and the top of the door frame of the houses where they will eat it. So they're talking about right where you open your door. there's a frame. And so the frame on the sides, the two sides, and the lintel, the frame above the door, you take it and you paint blood on there. They will eat the meat the same night. They will eat it roasted over the fire with bread made without yeast and with bitter herbs. And we see that these people are eating the bitter herbs even as we speak, and they have the bread there. And they're dipping it in salt water, which is, it stands for the tears, because tears are salty and are water. Do not eat it raw or boil it in water, but roast it over the fire with its head, its legs, and its entrails. So usually what you're going to do, if you're going to roast a whole lamb or goat, is you're going to disembowel it. You're going to take out all the organs. You might eat that organ meat, although I don't know if they're allowed to eat it. But I know they're not allowed to eat it for this, but they're saying to cook it that way. And everything in this has to do with the fact that they're in a hurry. They want to get out of Dodge, get out of Egypt. Do not eat it raw or boiled in water, but roast it over the fire with its head, its legs, and its entrails. You must leave nothing until morning, but you must burn with fire whatever remains of it until morning. This is how you are to eat it. Dressed to travel, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. You are to eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. I will pass through the land of Egypt in the same night, and I will attack all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both of humans and of animals, and on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. So we see once again that this is not a fight between God and Pharaoh. This is a fight between God and what the Egyptians believe. And we're going to see when the children of Israel get out into the desert that they believe in these Egyptian gods. A lot of them do. And the Egyptian gods are fascinating. You can get a PhD just studying Egyptian gods. And they're not, we think of Egypt as one country, but it was several kingdoms. And some of them were in the lower part and some of them were in the upper part over the history. And so different ones would have different deities that they worshipped. And those deities would sometimes morph into other deities. But I'm digressing. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are, so that when I see the blood, I will pass over you. And it's called the Passover. And this plague will not fall on you to destroy you when I attack the land of Egypt. And here's this family on here. They're reading from the Haggadah, or Haggadah, however you want to pronounce it, of the Seder. The Seder is and it says Youth Haggadah. The Seder is the meal, and they drink wine, although kids are probably going to have grape juice, and you see some grape juice over there. And so they read this story. And that was one of the things that I thought of doing, which was instead of reading chapter 12, just read a Seder Haggadah. But that's not the Word of God, and this Bible is. This day will become a memorial for you, and you will celebrate it as a festival to the Lord. You will celebrate it perpetually as a lasting ordinance. And I remember one time, I have no idea why I was watching this show, but it was an MTV show back when MTV was relevant. And it was these kids, they were on this bus and they would go around and do like crazy things. They all stayed together. And this one particular night, they were getting ready to go to Vegas. And they got to Vegas, and there was this one girl who was Jewish and said, listen, I'm Jewish, I'm not real religious, but you need to find me a place to have Passover. And they were like, well, what are you talking about? How are we going to find you? There's nobody here that, we don't know anybody here. And she said, just ask people if they're Jewish. And when they say yes, explain that I need to have the Passover Seder with a Jewish family. And they'll know what to do. And they immediately, when they talk to somebody and said, are you Jewish? Yeah, why? Well, are you having Passover tonight? Yeah, well, this girl said, oh, she's Jewish? That's fine. And they took her home, and then later on she went back and she was going crazy in the casino with the other kids and stuff like that. But it's just, and this is where it starts. You'll do this. You will celebrate it perpetually as a lasting ordinance. For 7 days you must eat bread made without yeast. Surely on the first day you must put away yeast from your houses, because anyone who eats bread made with yeast from the first day of the seventh day, or from the first day to the seventh day, will be cut off from Israel. So there's all kinds of things that happen. They go around the house and they try to get rid of all the yeast, anything with yeast in it. So if you have beer, anything like that. I forget how wine winds up being okay, because it's fermented, it has yeast in it. Although they may not have known that it was yeast back then. And this is, they're not doing this like what these people are doing here. And this is a little bit different than what was originally done in the book of Exodus. But these people aren't doing this 7-day feast in Egypt. This is what they're being told they're going to do. This is a promise that they're going to put this blood on the doorposts and the lentils, and they're going to eat, but they're not going to celebrate this until they're out. On the first day there will be a holy convocation, and on the seventh day there will be a holy convocation for you. You must do no work of any kind on them, only what every person will eat. That alone may be prepared for you. So you will keep the feast of unleavened bread, because on this very day I brought your regiments out from the land of Egypt, and so you must keep this day perpetually as a lasting ordinance. In the first month, from the 14th day of the month, in the evening, you will eat bread made without yeast until the 21st day of the month in the evening. For 7 days, yeast must not be found in your houses, and that's why they have this matzah bread there. For whoever eats what is made with yeast, that person will be cut off from the community of Israel, whether a foreigner or one born in the land. You will not eat anything made with yeast. In all the places where you live, you must eat bread made without yeast. Then Moses summoned all the elders of Israel and told them, go and select for yourselves a lamb or young goat for your families and kill the Passover animals. Take a branch of hyssop Dip it in the blood that is in the basin and apply to the top of the doorframe and the 2 side posts some of the blood that is in the basin. Not one of you is to go out the door of his house until morning, for the Lord will pass through to strike Egypt, and when he sees the blood on the top of the doorframe and the 2 side posts, then the Lord will pass over the door, and he will not permit the destroyer to enter your houses to strike you. So it's interesting that they use that word destroyer, because God says he's going to do it. But Christians believe that it's actually Jesus, who was a man of peace, for the most part, when he walked the earth. You must observe this event as an ordinance for you and for your children forever. When you enter the land that the Lord will give you, just as he said, you must observe this ceremony. When your children ask you, "What does this ceremony mean to you?" then you will say, "It is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover." And so that's part of this whole thing here where the children ask, it's, I think, 8 questions. Why is this day different than every other day? And there's several questions. I don't remember exactly how many. And then the Father answers those questions. It's all written down on these scripts in the Haggadah. When your children ask you, "What does this ceremony mean to you?" then you will say, "It is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, when he passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt, when he struck Egypt and delivered our households. The people bowed down low to the ground, and the Israelites went away and did exactly as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron." It happened at midnight. The Lord attacked all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the captive who was in prison, and all the firstborn of the cattle. Pharaoh got up in the night, along with all his servants and all Egypt, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was no house in which there was not someone dead. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron in the night and said, "Get up, get out from among my people, both you and the Israelites. Go serve the Lord as you have requested. Also take your flocks and your herds, just as you have requested, and leave. But bless me also." The Egyptians were urging the people on in order to send them out of the land quickly, for they were saying, "We are all dead." So the people took their dough before the yeast was added with their kneading troughs. And I have a kneading trough downstairs that I use sometimes. But I don't really make anything that's unleavened bread. With their kneading troughs bound up in their clothing on their shoulders. Now the Israelites had done as Moses told them. They had requested from the Egyptians silver and gold items and clothing. The Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, and they gave them whatever they wanted, and so they plundered Egypt. The Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Succoth. There were about 600,000 men on foot. So we're talking about men of military age. So there were maybe 25, maybe 30. This guy's washing his hands ceremonially. He's not doing anything weird. There's a whole ritual to this, how you wash your hands. So this is the men of military age. If there was a battle, these are the guys that would have fought it. For the Israelites, there's probably 2 million people. So you have the men of military age, and the women and the children. So there's probably as many women, give or take, as men. So that'd be 1.2 million. And then maybe 800,000 kids, because probably the size of the family back then would be 3 or 4 kids per family. They reproduced a lot more than we do now because a lot of people died in childbirth. A lot of people died, when they were children. A lot of infant mortality. Plus their dependents. So it's 600,000 men on foot plus their dependents. A mixed multitude also went up with them. So we don't know how many that was. That might have been another 1 million people. And that's what, I don't know if it was this time or the last in chapter 11 when I was talking about that. It's not like, the good guys are the Jewish people and the bad guys are the Egyptians. The bad guys were Egyptians, but not the Egyptians. And the good guys were and I'm talking about Moses and Aaron, Jewish. But we're going to see that a lot of these people came with them, the mixed multitude from a whole bunch of different countries came with them and were delivered from Egypt, from the bondage there. They were slaves in Egypt. And at one point in time, Pharaoh was killing the firstborn males and all that, and God was like, yeah, well, watch this. You want to try to kill the firstborn males of my people? You couldn't do it. Moses made it through that. But watch what I do. And he actually did it. So, but we're going to see that the Jewish people just start doing all kinds of messed up stuff. They baked cakes of bread without yeast, using the dough they had brought from Egypt, for it was made without yeast, because they were thrust out of Egypt and were not able to delay. They could not prepare food for themselves either. So we see, now they weren't doing, I'll say this once again, what this guy here is doing. This has to do with the mortar of, this is, I think it's called harasset or something like that. Something that you eat, and it's supposed to stand for the mortar because they built the pyramids, or they may have built the pyramids. They weren't doing this. They killed those animals, and then they left really quick with the bread. And so they're just doing that. I don't think they got a chance to cook those animals. Maybe they did. They baked cakes of bread without yeast, using the dough they had brought from Egypt, for it was made without yeast. Because they were thrust out of Egypt and were not able to delay, they could not prepare food for themselves either. So, yeah, duh. Now the length of time the Israelites lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of the 430 years, on the very day, all the regiments of the Lord went out of the land of Egypt. It was a night of vigil for the Lord to bring them out from the land of Egypt. And so on this night, all Israel is to keep the vigil to the Lord for generations to come. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "This is the ordinance of the Passover. No foreigner may share in eating it, but everyone's servant who is bought for money after you have circumcised him, may eat it. A foreigner and a hired worker must not eat it. It must be eaten in one house. You must not bring any of the meat outside the house, and you must not break a bone of it. So, I don't know why you would break the bones of it, but you weren't allowed to do that. The whole community of Israel must observe it. When a foreigner lives with you and wants to observe the Passover to the Lord, all his males must be circumcised. So this is the big thing here. They have to be circumcised. And remember, back in the book of Genesis, there was a deal with two of the sons of Jacob. I think it was Reuben and Simeon. This guy wanted to marry their sister, and they're like, yeah, well, you have to get circumcised. And you're disabled. When you're a full-grown male and you're circumcised, you're disabled. So when a foreigner lives with you and wants to observe the Passover to the Lord, all his males must be circumcised, and then he may approach and observe it. He will be like one who was born in the land. But no uncircumcised person may eat of it. The same law that will apply to the person who is native born and to the foreigner who lives among you. So all the Israelites did exactly as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron. And on this very day, the Lord brought the Israelites out of the land of Egypt by their regiments. Regiments is a military formation where they're lined up and they're marching. Now, I don't know if they marched, but we're going to see over the next few chapters how maybe 4 million people were arrayed so that they could all move in the same direction, move from Egypt into the land of Canaan. Next time we're going to look at the law of the firstborn, and then we're going to move to the Red Sea, and we're going to see in chapter 14 what is the end, I believe, of the Passover story. And this, however many days, I don't know how long it was, of them going from being slaves in Egypt to crossing through the Red Sea, in Christian tradition anyway. And that's what I'm most familiar with. It is probably the second most important event besides the life and death of and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Or I should just say the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So as these guys continue in their Seder, and they're up to the 12th point, I don't know what that is, I'm going to say, peace out. No, it didn't make the balloons go. And I will see you next time.